Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We've got Sheetal from Saxo Bank, and then we've got Divya and Madhu from Thoughtworks here to talk about what Saxo Bank is doing from a data mesh perspective, as well as how Saxo Bank and Thoughtworks work together to do some, not just internal data mesh concept, but as well how they're working with external parties. So very, very interesting, very exciting. So, as I mentioned briefly, if you have questions, please throw them in the Q&A. That way we can easily track them and kind of keep them going. But outside of that, I'm going to turn over the show, and you'll see me back again when it comes to the Q&A side. But this is you all show to run. So again, thank you so much for doing this.
Okay.
Sheetal, did you want to kick it off?
Yeah. So let me
start the slides.
Sharing. Correct. Let me start the slides. Please confirm if you can see the slides.
Yes.
Let's make sure our logistics are good. Okay. Correct. So let me kick this off. I'm Sheetal Pratik from Saxo Bank, heavily involved in driving the data governance technology solution for the bank and enabling the bank to have a better data management, data governance solution for our domain teams. But before I actually start with talking about the solution, I'll hand over to Divya, to talk a few lines on why this was important.
Hi, I'm Divya Joshi. I am head of partnerships at Thoughtworks, and I'm also a client director. And I was a client principal at Saxo Project. So before I start anything else, I want to start with a story about my past life as business lead at Uber. So when I was at Uber, I wanted to see how my partnerships are doing. I wanted to see how many drivers came through a certain partnership, how many riders came through, what particular time of the day where one location needed more cars. And guess what? I needed a dev to help me out with SQL queries. And when I went there, the person did not have the context of business or did not have time. Both were annoying things for me, not great idea. And I always thought, is there a way that I could do something myself? Fast forward, I joined Thoughtworks and I saw the clients struggling with, say, data latency or dependence on specialized domain teams, and thinking, how can we break down these tech barriers? And then I read Data Mesh and spoke to Zamak about her concepts. And it really made sense. How about a scenario when business is empowered to create your own quality rules, check quality, and have self-serve capability, do things without relying on SQL. So I really loved this concept. Then we got introduced to Saxo stakeholders. And Saxo was fantastic because, first of all, this was a bank which was making data its priority. And the second thing was they were already on a journey. They had done a couple of things. They were thinking about right things. They had all ducks in the row. And that made Saxo a really good pilot case study. And with this, and also when we spoke to the stakeholders, we realized that these are the people with a mission as well as a vision. And we started on this journey. And I'll hand over to Sheetal to take it forward.
Thank you, Divya. And that was very encouraging. And I think this commitment from both of us, both the organizations, really help us sail through the entire thing very positively. So quickly, let me introduce and talk about the bank that I'm working for. Saxo Bank is majorly into provide investment opportunities for our global capital markets. delivering user-friendly and personalized multi-asset trading and investment tools to private clients, and open banking solutions to wholesale clients, which are mostly large financial institutions, trading and doing business in capital markets. Now, our funding ethos are democratizing trading and investment. So, I mean, and just fast forward now to why data is important. Now, this has been very clearly laid down as a foundation by our CEO, Kim Furness, that as a bank, we trade in data and not in physical goods. So it's imperative that there is no two cents, why data should have all the focus, and not only solving it technically, but I think Zhamak has talked about a concept socio-technical, solving it socially as well. Now, why data mesh for Saxo Bank, right? So let me try to put it this way. What our vision is, what our problems are, and what we as an organization want to do. Forget about data, but what are our success parameters? So as a vision for the bank, the vision that has been outlined is to enable people to fulfill their financial aspirations and make an impact. Now, for this, effective use of data is very important, because as a bank, we aim to optimize our business processes, uplift our client experience, and scale out to meet our incredible rate of growth. Now, in all this, the value of good quality data and of high business value is important. And again, nailing it back to what our CEO said, we trade in data. While we are doing all of this, we want to provide cheap transactions to our clients, right? We want to offer cheap services to our client. For that, our platform cost has to be optimized and our resources have to be lean without compromising on the quality. This we could see being achieved by having a federated way of managing the data and governing the data, where the domain teams can publish and manage the data through platforms which are pretty much self-serviceable, right? This reduces the cost and need of having heavy centralized team. Now, this brings a concept again championed by Zhamak in her data mesh write-ups and concepts of data as a product, which I will introduce the analogy a little later, but the basic principles of producing data as a product are ownership, discoverability, data curation, making it analyzable, reliable, authoritative, and immutable. So we were looking for a solution and laying out platforms which helps us achieve all this, which in turn enables the organization to meet its vision. So I'll just briefly touch about some of the concepts which are already touched upon, Zhamak, just to set the context. What we would do as data teams traditionally in the past, right? We'll have an operational plane, we'll have data pipelines, the data pipelines push the data to analytical plane, data lake solutions would be there, which in turn pushes, or the data gets pulled by different consumers like data scientists, ML teams, data warehouse teams, data analysts. Now, what is changing, right? What data mesh tells us to do? Data mesh tells us to treat data into different parameters, right? To have distributed domain-driven architecture, to have self-serve platform, and to enable product thinking in the data space as well. Now, this is a diagram which I've just put from Zhamak's latest book, the new chapter that has been out, right? 4 interrelated principles of data mesh, and something which is very interesting. The only simplicity to be trusted is the simplicity to be found on the far side of the complexity. So obviously the data solutions are becoming very complex. But what she has highlighted is if we go back to the domain-driven architecture, which has been there since quite some time, what we've said is domains are nothing but business teams, right? The organization being split into business teams, and a lot of operational activities are being driven by business teams. But data teams was never considered, the data activities were never considered within those paradigms, right? They continue to be centralized. So she's just pushed as the data is growing and growing, it is not scalable to have a centralized team address the scalability, because everything is getting digitized and data is creating much more than ever before. Now, a practical way that has been suggested is to push the data handling and data management also to the domain teams, right? So let's talk about these principles: domain-oriented ownership, which says data should be published by the domain teams as a product, and in turn, it influences federated government, because if we are pushing the data management to the business teams and the domain teams, there are chances that again silos will be created. So a light touch federated governance is very important to increase or to make sure compliance and interoperability between different domains. And all of this can be possible if technology team can help the organization with a self-service platform. And we were always looking back at these principles when we're thinking of the solution. And therefore, these principles are not in theory, but pretty much to practically study, irrespective of what the technology is. And the other reason is, when we started working on it and we looked at the industry, we hardly could find any physical implementation of data mesh concept, which was fairly new 2 years back. And we started thinking about it. We actually started on a Kafka journey 2 years back, and we started on data governance 1 year back. So there was no references that were available back then. Now, data domains, as I said before, are logical grouping of business plus who owns those business, right? A clarity around the ownership of those groupings. Now, indicative domains that we are coming up, this is really evolving. This is not a problem that can be solved in a defined time, but it's important to get started, start with indicative domains and provide the organization ability to evolve the domains as well. So payments, trading, markets, risk, post-trade, reference, finance, party are indicative domains at very high level on which we got started. And we also talked about a common repository, because there were a lot of references which were common, which would not cleanly fit into any of these domains and would be referred by all of these domains. So we started, having a bounded context of a common repository. Now, I was talking about light touch governance, and this is a very high level, flow of our operating model, where I'll start with, we kind of laid down Kafka as the authoritative source. So how do we start, right? So the data governance office, the activity of defining the domains got started. Then the data governance office is involved in defining the domains and also defining the data owners for the domains. Now, once this data owners or business owners are defined, they delegate their responsibility to the right people in the team who collaborate with their domain engineers, who in turn also work with the enterprise data architects to make sure that the enterprise domain model is updated, and they define the data products, get it approved. All of we have an approval mechanism, which is a set of specialists. It goes through that, and then it gets published to Kafka. Now, this approval mechanism just ensures there's a light touch governance around the schema definition, and there's a standardized model of publishing the data products, because the consumers need a standardized model of data products being published, right, to make it interoperable, to make it understood. Now, product thinking, right? So how do we come up with product? So this is, I think a few organizations have got it. We also, thought in those terms only. Anything that is consumable, their usability. So as and when we picked up our champion domains to get started, and we picked up the champion use cases for those domains, the prioritized domains. Obviously, the best way to get started was to pick up certain use cases, which is not business critical, because you're establishing your MVP, you're establishing a theory, and you're rolling out a platform which is fairly new. So to lessen the noise, we started with our champion domains, and we started with certain use cases which were not business critical. But once those were established, they were working, we had a soft launch, we had a period of stabilization, we moved on to highly critical business applications and use cases as well. Now, what is data for Saxo Bank? So when we are publishing these data products, what are we promising to consumers? What do we think a data product to consist of? They should have explicit schemas. They should be strongly typed, standard aligned, consistent, classified at source, obviously predictable numbers, documented, and they should be agile, right? If there are changes in the schema, we should be able to handle, and data should be curated. Now, we have defined our operating model, but we also wanted to define our platform operating model, a self-serviceable platform which the data team was providing to the organization. Now, so basically we have producers on the left-hand side, which can be API. So the data products can be published through Kafka connectors because we have Kafka as the authoritative source, through APIs, and the data products get published on Kafka. We have adopted, for data governance solution, we have adopted Data Hub, which is open source by LinkedIn. We also have designed partnership with Acral, which is enterprise version or enterprise version officially announced by LinkedIn for Data Hub open source. So though we are working completely on open source, we just worked in a relationship of design partnership with Acral. And for data quality, we have great expectation that's open source by semiconductors. Now, when we are publishing the schema or data products to Kafka, these are the things we want to take care of. Buff style check, compatibility check, generate canonical version, and publish code bindings. From the ops perspective, we have topics, which schema management, connector management, streaming DQ rules. So we are also enabling the domain teams to publish the DQ rules based on which the data quality runs, and the results get published, which increases the confidence in the consumers because the quality is now transparent. So the domain modelers manage these schema pipeline, the ops team, the domain ops team manage the ops pipeline. So what is to be noted is fairly everything is managed by domain. Because we are still in an early phase relatively to other products in the bank, we do a hand holding, but in a matured state, we really expect domain teams to work BAU without much need of hand holding from the platform teams. Now, the consumers can consume data directly from Kafka, and they can use our internal product data workbench, which is a data governance solution, to see everything that is available on the authoritative source and what they can consume. And I'll little bit touch more upon it later. Now, what does mean our data mission? Drive data with consistency across identified systems and areas of operation. Data should always be governed. So anything that is being published to authoritative source should be governed, of adequate quality, assigned ownership, and be unambiguous. Data is managed according to the ongoing and self-sustained data dialogue established in domain teams for the bank. Drive better data quality for the bank because, again, we trade in data, better deals. How do we activate the domain? So I talked about domain-driven modeling. I talked about domain ownership of data. But how do we actually get it operational, right? So, and this has evolved over a couple of years by learning certain things, by failing certain times. And we've evolved and ultimately reached a stage where we are finding it to be working pretty BAU. So the data governance team identifies the domains. It identifies the business owners, the domain owners. The domain owners identify certain domain roles within their team. And then it is a time to bring the domain under governance while ensuring a set of focused collaborative MVP activities. Now, knowledge control. So we need to list down the key data assets or data elements that is a part of a logical modeling. Describe the meaning or intention of the data definitions, to the data classification, authority source to be defined and agreed upon as per the domain. Then understand the top data quality issues, working with the domain experts, and understand the data lineage of that domain, how data is traversing through the systems. now is the time to bring a behavior change, because the major challenge or the major shift in the thinking when you are on a journey of data mesh is to get the domain teams have an understanding that domain teams own the data. It's not platform team. Now, appoint, anchor, and educate data domain product ownership. So we do a lot of internal data literacy forums where we kind of educate. We have, because we are in a scaling mode right now and heavy adoption mode, we have a special SWAT team, which has the core responsibility of this. Then we connect the data producers to the consumers and elicit what the consumer future data requires. Basically establishing a contract between the producers and consumers directly. And they should know what data is usable and what data product should be accordingly published, and then use the platform. And then certain experts and data governance office and domain architects collaborate to bring data in motion. That means publish data products on Kafka. Now, why Thoughtworks, right? So when we were, as I said, Saxo Bank, we have been on a journey towards federated data architecture since late 2018. And when Kafka was already there in early phases, and then we decided to have a data quality, data management solution, we did consider a lot of, off-the-shelf products which were existing. We had our own challenges in terms of adopting their products because we really wanted data quality, metadata for all kinds of data, including high volume transactional data, and we are facing some limitations. Then we wanted all these data quality reports and the data through Kafka to be push based to reduce the latencies. We were high speed streaming data, and all the data we wanted to be governed. And then we thought, we were pretty convinced that data mesh was the right way to do. But selecting the right set of technologies and whether we pick up open sources or whether we should go with off-the-shelf products, there were challenges with the off-the-shelf products, but rejecting the off-the-shelf products or these licensed products that were doing very well in the market was also not the straight away decision, right? Because they are doing very well in other areas. Therefore, we thought the best way to deal with this is to do a partnership with Thoughtworks, as they have been the original champion through Jamak for data mesh. Now, what we did together. So what we started with, we first co-chartered vision-driven data workbench roadmap. We did a lot of workshops and persona interviews. We evaluated further commercial tools and open source tools and did a very deep dive analysis on what actually Saxo needed through those persona interviews and what each of these products were offering. Then we selected these open sources as after taking the stakeholders, our business champions in the journey, and then the team worked together for tool integration into the data mesh based Kafka ecosystem and enhance the data onboarding process. Obviously, we did our key persona interviews. We defined our data quality challenges. Then accordingly, the framework requirements were driven. So another important thing we found as a result of our persona interviews were a lot of data quality issues were coming because of inconsistent nomenclature of the data elements in different systems, because of which the transformations were very heavy, and some of the data values, when you sync up the data and they're not named similarly, there was a heavy dependency on the SMEs, and they would go out of sync sometime or the other, and a lot of tickets and human resources were being used to correct them and deal with them. And the solution that we championed as a Saxo Bank along with Thoughtworks was to come up with a business glossary solution. Now, eventually, business term we contributed back to LinkedIn, and it has been recognized as the first-class entity for the Data Hub open source. So what we can do as a part of this, and Madhu will show later, is what is data quality? Data quality is, a good data quality is something which is compliant to what business needs. So if a business is introducing a new function, business knows what each data element mean in the industry standards, right? So they should be able to contribute to define those data elements. They should be able to contribute what business rules should apply so that the data when is fed in the system is clean. And therefore, enabling the business to define the data quality rules really helps people in the technology as well. Then, if the business data elements are also linked to the business terms that is defined by the business, or to the industry standard business terms like FIBO in our case, like we are a financial institution, to FIBO, ISO, FPML, etc. Then even if the data elements are named differently across different systems, but they can all converge to the similar nomenclature, which is defined by the industry experts, the chances of data inconsistencies are minimized. And this is a heavy contribution, and a business is really looking forward to use this heavily. Then an integrated DC and DQ framework empowered personas to view the data products already onboarded to their Kafka setup and define data quality rules. Now, high-level data pain points as a result of the workshops that we did. A data asset owner would a lot of time lack on the clarity of the ownership of data. What is he owning? How he manages the data that he's owning? What should be the, and all these rules were coming up, formalizing, and were new, right? So what is a data steward need to do? What he needs to look at? What were his responsibilities? A data governance committee member needs a clarity on what should be federated, what should be centralized. Then as we are maturing on our adoption journey, data governance committee member really needs to see how and domains are moving from centralized to federated. Data scientists who are heavily using these data should know whether they can trust the data and frame their models accordingly. A data consumer should not deal with data inconsistencies, and it should not, and the data they are consuming, they should not ideally be dependent on the SMEs that are producing the data. They should be able to consume the data products that has been published pretty independently. After doing all this, we kind of narrowed down on the product that we wanted to create. We actually created the in-house product, which is called Data Workbench. And we wanted it to be one-stop data shop that provides transparency of Saxo's data ecosystem, unlike our current state, which is becoming increasingly complex as we grow. And a product should help Saxo to improve time to market and unlock new insights. So this is how our product looks like, where we really wanted to develop something which is a Google of data for Saxo. So I will give it back to Madhu. Madhu, you can take it from here. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Sheetal. Let me know once you're able to see my screen.
We can see it.
Okay, perfect. So let me start introducing myself. So myself, Madhu, I'm a data strategist from Thoughtworks. I've been part of this Saxo data mesh project. I've been a tech principals in this project. So let me share a few details which the experience that we had in the entire journey. So yeah, you see, like Sheetal talked about like the mission and vision, what is an expectation of data workbench. Let me start with a few of the design principles which we undertake while you design the solution. Let me start with the loosely coupled architecture. This is where like this is where we're talking about the consumers are like and producers are loosely coupled. One by adopting Kafka. Another thing is there is a established contract between the producers and consumers. Even with the change of schema, we adapted a schema evolution. With that, it should be a loosely coupled so that there's no strict binding. I should be able to consume older version of the messages as well as a newer version of the messages. And scalable, I meant in two ways. One is scalable with respect to volumes of the data, new data sources being onboarded into the system. At the same time, scalable in terms of a delivery of the new data analytic product. While we are moving to the domain-driven decentralization, that's where more and more people should be able to produce the data products and make it available to the rest of the organization. And evolution architecture, this is what, like, we started with certain business requirements today. As the business needs evolve, my architecture should be able to meet the new business demands and requirements. Sheetal touched about the platform. Okay, this is where like data platform providing the capabilities. As a platform, I should be able to provide a capabilities so that my platform consumers here, domain or business teams, able to leverage that through a self-serviceable aspect and able to produce their data set with minimal intervention with minimal or no intervention of platform as it actually evolves. At the same time, this overall platform should provide autonomy to the domain team. Okay, I'll give an example. Like, I should control who can access my data by defining my security policies of my data product. But at the same time, platform should provide the capability to implement those policies. That's why your autonomy is still with your owners of the data. And observability, this is where like platform provided the capabilities to the teams so that they should be able to manage their data and pipelines without relying on a central team to manage in day-to-day operations. Last but not the least, containerization. We adapted the containerization even for our data Workbench product development so that it can work in on-prem or cloud or multi-cloud architecture. With that, I'll move on. So this is where like data Workbench we're talking about. Okay, this is like enable the data sharing between the producers and consumers. So one other thing which Saxo adopted is a new data hub, which is backed by Kafka. So any data we wanted to make enable to the rest of the organization from one domain to another domain, it has to go through a Kafka so that it will be governed. Governed means, I think we talked about, okay, there is a strict schema and there is a quality approved. There are like certain standards and the data will be discoverable, self-service. All these aspects will be provided to the data product. That is why whatever it goes through the Kafka, we are ensuring that these are like features or aspects baked into the product so that consumers can consume at a confidence. Okay, we are talking about analytical data set. This can be be it a SQL Server data warehouse or a Snowflake or even other application which is consuming the insights. Again, like we talked about leveraging the two open source tools, which is LinkedIn Data Hub for a catalog and Great Expectation for a data quality. I'll move on. So this is where I wanted to apply, talk about with respect to data mesh. Okay, there are four principles we talked about. The first, we started with domain-driven decentralization. This is where we are pushing the responsibility of the analytical data production or producing to the domain teams who actually generate the business data. First reason is they understand their data better than anybody, central team, which is specialized in the technical skills, and they can produce the better quality data. They can articulate their data better, right? To do that, right, we need to be supplemented with the, again, like you might have seen the Sheetal talked about the dependency chart, right? While we are pushing the responsibility, they need to be supplemented with the self-service capabilities. So let's talk about what are those self-service capabilities. Let's say I need to produce my data analytical product to the rest of the organization. So I need to be able to, okay, define a schema and define a contract. And I should be able to create an ingestion process to make the data available. And I need to build the transformations, okay, so that those products are like readily consumable by the consumers. So the platform provides these self-service capabilities. So to the domain team, majorly through declarative interfaces. So I need to build an ingestion process. I should be able to use some DSL or a template to fill in, so that, okay, platform should be able to translate this into ingestion process to bring the data into Kafka platform. Similarly, let's say I should be able to apply transformations. Yeah, transformations cannot be a templatized, but as long as there is a plumbing work, okay, a pre and post activity are like accessing the data sources and sinks, I should be able to quickly build the transformations. Okay, what the platform responsibility? Abstracting the technical complexities so that larger team able to produce the data sets. And also we're talking about, okay, so another self-service capability is we are providing with the to the domain team is the self-service data quality interface. Okay, so as long as producers are able to document the quality rules in a certain format and a certain DSL, that's it. So domain team responsibility is done. As long as you checked in the code, we should be able to apply the quality rules. Let me walk through that process. Right now, domain team is, okay, we have each domain team manage their own code repositories. Each one will have their own repositories. They manage that, okay, which to bring the data into the platform. Let's say I have a schema repositories. I have a, let's say, pipelines repository. We call as a ops repositories. Okay, let's say I'm from a market domain. I need to bring the data from market. Let's say product X. I will actually define a schema, what I'm going to publish to the rest of the organization. And I'll be creating an ingestion process using the predefined templates, so that it actually creates the topics and create an ingestion process and also build the transformations. And I'll be able to document the quality rules and push it to the repository. What happens behind the scenes, right? As soon as you publish the quality rules in the repository, so you create a platform capability, create a consumer to the Kafka topic and apply the quality rules using the Great Expectation framework and exhibit the or emit the quality metrics. So this again, we are pushing to another topics after standardizing these metrics so that multiple data products can push to the quality metrics one topic. And from here, we actually like drain or sync this quality metrics into Elasticsearch instance index. From there, we have built a Kibana dashboards so that like one can view, both producer can look at their quality view of the data by you can use the trend as well as snapshot or even historical view of quality metrics. They can also see that how quality is improved over a period of time or like deteriorated over a period of time. So this is bring the, okay, let's bring the quality of your data product. So if you look at what is data product, right? So we are talking about, it brings a SLAs and SLOs. One, we are talking about making sure that my data is available for a consumption with the enough documentation so that there is an address, there is a description of the data product, right? That is where we are leveraging the same information provided by the domain teams, extract and parse, and creating the meta models of a catalog through our integration services, right? So that the same information of the provided by the team, which is being fed to your catalog. Now the catalog will have one can able to discover your data sets. Let's say your consumer wanted to look at certain data set, they can come and discover through a Google like search interface and get to the right data set and can understand better. Okay, so what kind of details I'll talk about in a minute. So can understand the data better so that they can decide on, okay, whether this is good enough to consume or this is the right data set I'm looking for. And we also like integrated with both your documentation as well as a quality view in one integrated workbench so that people can understand the data better as well as the quality of the things. Last but not the least, I want to talk about the monitoring. Okay, again, like platform is providing enough monitoring capabilities. Okay, so that domain team can look at their operations of their data pipeline, their data products. Okay, so each process will exhibit the metrics so that domain team can consume or subscribe the events of interest for their respective data products so that they will be able to manage, and if there is an issue, they can quickly fix that. And we have leveraged the Git as a primary GitOps as a primary process to trigger these processes like deploying these pipelines and pushing the data to catalog and building the data quality process pipelines. So let me move on. So let's recap what is a data product, right? So a data product is nothing but is a self-contained unit which has a input, okay, where I'm consuming the data from and what data I'm exhibiting, and set of process which translate from input to output. What are the characteristics the product we are trying to bring in, right? One is discoverable. So anyone in the organization should be able to discover the data sets of the interest, and then based on the access policy should be able to access based on the requirement, right? Then they should be addressable. You should be able to identify where this data is available. Is it available in Kafka? Is it available in my Snowflake warehouse? Or is it available in certain API? And self-describing. This is where, okay, one can talk about itself, right? What is this data product about? What the business meaning about it? What is the structure? What kind of elements it's, okay, presenting or providing that, right? The next is trustworthy. This is where like brings the confidence to the product. So what quality it is, okay, what kind of rules it actually passes through, how much quality is that, like 90%, okay, compliant based on the rules or what, right? And last but not the least is interoperable. This is what, like, okay, it makes easily consumable, provided this way like governance aspect coming in. So the standards aspect, okay, let's say I'm using the serialized format as a protobuf, or like let's use a Parquet format of data exchange, right? With this kind of a standards, you are making that data is interoperable so that multiple consumer with a multiple technology is able to consume the data. So how did we bring in these kind of aspects? Okay, how did we build this meta model, right? So to bring the discoverable, addressable. So this is the simplistic view of our data product meta model. So if I call data product, first I'll talk about what is my product name, description of the data product, and which domain it belongs to. Then I'll go on further, right? Who are the owners of, who owns this data product? Okay, we also capture both business owner as well as technology owners, so that your consumers can connect with the right owners based on the access needs or what, or like based on actual needs. Then we also bring in the schema. This is where the contract or like structure of your data product which help you to consume the data. And the lineage is another important aspect which gives the confidence to the consumer, how this data product is created, what are the source, how it actually came to this level, what kind of transformations which, okay, which went through to reach that, what are the other data sets which associated to create this product. That brings to the enough information of a data product. Now we are trying to supplement with the data quality. One, what quality rules this product is conforming to, what kind of quality metrics which is exhibiting as part of the data being shared. So last but not the least, the business glossary. This is where I think Sheetal mentioned about one of the challenge is the data inconsistency. So okay, let's say customer in one domain may not be the same as another domain, or account in one domain may not be the same as, okay, to bring the uniformity, business glossary interests you, right? So this provides a unified vocabulary within the organization. So it clearly defines, okay, if you say an account, maybe account in a trading means this is what in account in trading. So that as long as if your data product says, okay, this is a trading account, okay, people can have much better view of what it is. This is where we actually implemented and even contributed back. Let me take you a little more deep dive of the business glossary, because one of the important feature this is brings in. So we just like Sheetal briefly talked about FIBO, which is financial industry business ontology, right? So these are ontology providers which actually have a defined meaning or industry standard meanings to the various terms. I wanted to talk about two things here. Okay, is ontology hierarchical, which has a nodes and terms. Nodes can have a further hierarchy. So if I look at the FIBO has a foundation is one I can say subdomain or one kind of hierarchy, and another, if I look at another hierarchy, which is a finance, business and commerce. Within that, one of the subdomain is product and services. Within that, you have a clients and accounts. And it goes on. So if I look at account as a term, right? So this can be associated with your data sets. It has a specific meaning what is account means, how the account is actually formed. So this is where like term can be related, business terms can be composed with the other terms. Okay, here account is composed from account provider, identifier, account holder, balance, and open balance and close date, transaction record. Again, I wanted to call out as this balance itself is nothing but a monetary amount, which actually derived from the another business domain. So here you're reusing the business terms, and that way it actually encourages the reusability and modularity of the business terms. Then how this business, let's talk about how this business glossary will actually enhances the value of your data product. Let me go to the here, right? So this is where, if you look at left side, you have a entities are a data sets are a data product, right? You have a purchase order header. If I look at it in a simple relational terms, right? I have these attributes: ID, revision number, status, employee ID, vendor, order ID, and these things with the data types. And order line is this. If say order date, maybe somebody can interpret, or like it say total amount can somebody interpret. So maybe the vendor ID somebody can interpret. So there's a product code, so which does not have a self-contained meaning. Okay, you can supplement with a description of the attribute that may not be a standardized view. If I'm able to associate this a product identifier with the product code with the product identifier, so it means a lot to this. Okay, one example I can talk about is, let's say your product identifier is a certain structure in your organization. So you say, I define a product identifier, which is like, let's say alphanumeric code, which first two letters are like, there's 2 letters and maybe 6 digits kind of thing. So wherever you have product code, as long as you relate your data product to the business term, you can apply those business rules. And if somebody is looking at the data set, okay, so can navigate from it. Okay, let's say where are like my product identifier being used? What are the data sets which is authoring this product identifier? Or like what are the entities which has a purchase orders is there? So that you should able to navigate easily. One other thing which is a discovery platform importance is how quickly you are able to navigate to the right data products of your interest, right? This is where like business glossary really helps through in a business language in authoritative meanings, right? Should able to navigate to the data sets of your interest much easier way. And here again, like map back to FIBO ontology, right? Your business terms again can compose, it can be complex structure or even simple granular as well as a quantity is an attribute, right? So it can be composed from other business terms from a different domains and different subdomains. So if you look at like the previous slides from Sheetal, so you have a trading domain, you have a common domain. So common domain is the one which is managed by your central organization or like data governance office as well as the your data architecting. So people can able to leverage those terms and to build your new terms of your domain related one, so that you are able to whatever is being defined already, you can leverage that and you can define your own terms. And again, the management of this business terms will be purely domain's responsibility, domain team's responsibility. That is where again autonomy actually goes to the domain teams. If I move on further, okay, this is what I wanted to spend a few minutes on that. We had leveraged the proto as a serialization format. Even we started with the Avro and moved on to the proto. So based on like more friendliness in terms of supporting more languages, and I would say more of extensibility and flexibility which proto brings in. So if you see here, okay, these are like our domain repositories. This is a common being from the governance office as well, data architect team managed. Rest will be managed by the domain teams. Each domain builds their own schemas. They build their own schemas in proto. What I wanted to talk about is what kind of flexibility it provides. If I look at this, if you look at this monetary amount, which is again borrowed from the FIBO. So in Saxo, we adopted the thing kind of a aggregated view. So one is like whatever we can leverage from a external interest, we can borrow from that. Wherever there is a, we differ in the kind of a definition, like the way Saxo have a different view of the term, we'll define our Saxo terms. In this case, monetary amount is being borrowed from a FIBO, and we attach using the proto extensibility using options. We actually extended that. Okay, this is from received from FIBO, and this is the URL which I can navigate to get more information. If I see monetary amount, which is nothing but two attributes. One is the amount, another is the currency. Again, this itself is the terms which can have a specific meaning. Maybe I can talk about currency. Like if you say currency as a string, which can be very simple. If you say currency as a type, which means that like tomorrow you can, if you wanted to apply validation rules, maybe if with a certain currency list we have, which is organization is reference data, you can apply that rule by using these terms itself. Similarly, if I look at the other example, is a customer account, which is again has an attribute of client ID, which again I can mark this as a, oh, this is nothing but a client identifier, is another term. So this is where I'm associating this client as a client identifier. If you wanted to search for client identifier, automatically you'll get to see this data set. Second thing I wanted to talk about here is, here if you see the customer name, we're trying to mention in the schema saying that, okay, additional metadata. Oh, this is the information classification as PII. So as long as you see that, okay, your governance automation can apply those rules. As a domain team, I'm like, okay, specifying, oh, this is a PII classification, right? As governance automation comes in, like whenever this data being exchanged, okay, then automatically masking and redaction kind of can be applied. So that is a kind of a thing which will be enabled by the proto team, proto definitions, so that like you can implement those rules much easier. Okay, this is a kind of a hierarchical view. Okay, monetary amount being framed from a decimal value as the currency, but this being referred by the multiple other entities. With this, I just wanted to bring back, like we talked about self-service capabilities, domain driven, right? Let me go back and talk about what is my journey of the data producers in the platform, right? So let's say I am from a market domain, right? So I need to bring my market data to the platform so that the rest of the organizations can be consumed. So first thing I come up, what information what analytical data I'm going to expose. This is where first I'll define the schema. I know my data better, I can actually come with the schema. Again, there is a platform supports with the standardization of how the schemas could be structured and what kind of rules to be implemented. Let's say every element should be documented. This is the kind of types can be used. That kind of a platform support come to me as a domain developer. So once I come with the schema, the next step is, how do I bring in my data from my source? Let's take an example of, I have data in my SQL server. Let's say intraday report, right? I need to be enabled into the analytical platform. So I have the data in the SQL server. I need to bring it to the Kafka, and from there, like people can consume directly or can be sync it to the other sources like Snowflake or SQL server. The first thing is I need to bring the data into the Kafka platform. That is an ingestion process. Then I'll apply certain transformation so that I can articulate my product better for a consumption. These are the two things I need to be doing that. Let's say for a building data ingestion, right? This where I think even Sheetal touched upon, we have a Kafka connector. Let's take one example of ingestion. From a SQL server, I can bring the data to the Kafka platform using the Kafka connector. This is one of the self-service ingestion capability we provided to the domain team. So domain teams can actually fill a template with a declarative interface. Let's say this is my source connection details. This is the topic I'm going to onboard. Again, I need to define what topic is, topic name, purpose of the topic, and who owns this data product, that information being filled in. Then you might need to fill an SQL query if they need to be little changes. Otherwise, it can pull the data, automatically creates a job and move into this one. That is the kind of self-service capabilities given to the product team. And from a transformation cannot be automated. This is where like platform is provided with the domain team is provided with the template project, so that domain team as a domain developer, I need to only fill in my business logic component. I'll write a Kafka streams processor in Java. Okay, that is what I'll develop in and check in my code. And along with that, this is the data set I'm producing. These are the quality rules. I'm confirming that, okay, this data product, okay, went through, right? So once these 3 things I'm done, I'll create a pull request. It goes through enough approval process, both domain, business, as well as the tech architects, whatever within the domain. Once that is done, approved, and this is where like platform capabilities kicks in and make the data available. First, it goes through a series of validations, starting from a schema validation, syntax and standard validation, and like names and everything is validated. Okay, we have a series of checks. Okay, make sure that there is a uniformity and standardization across the thing. So we talked about like there should not be siloed way of things, right? That is where this validation plays a key role. Once that is done, and I'll go through a series of activities. First, like I'll create a topic based on the information provided, automatically create a topic and register schema in the schema registry and generate the schema bindings for various consumers. It can be .NET bindings or maybe Java bindings. I create those bindings and publish into the artifact repository. And next part is pipelines deployment. So first is I'll deploy ingestion process, which is a Kafka Connect process created, and there is a pipeline which is deployed to, and a scheduled basis pull the data into the Kafka platform. Then I'll deploy the transformation jobs, which is again a Kafka stream jobs. Because like domain team which is filled in the right structure, I'll be able to deploy much easier. Then once that is done, okay, we have a quality rules. We'll create a consumer to the same topic, and which listens to the topic and apply the quality rules and publish the metrics, right? That job will be deployed. And another parallel pipeline, what we do is, okay, now the data pipeline is ready, right? Now we need to have enough documentation which actually can talk about this data and made it discoverable. That is where we have taken the same template information which is captured in the various processes. Okay, be it a schema, be it a pipeline templates, be it a quality rules, everything will put together. And this integrate metadata block, which actually translate this into the Metamodel of the data catalog and pushes into the data catalog. So with that, data producer is able to see data product in the platform, in the analytical platform, and they also will be able to see the quality of the snapshot and make the ready for a consume by your consumers. Let me talk through now the consumer interface, or what the consumers do with this platform, right? So this again, okay, this is a kind of interface we provided to all the stakeholders, be it a producers or a consumers or a governance office or even analysts, right? So this is a kind of we call it Google-like interface. Okay, people can discover the data sets of their interest. Okay, I'm looking for an account, right? I'll search for an account. Okay, it can search in a various granularity, be it attribute level or entity name or even business terms, right? So I should be able to search for data products of my interest. This is the way, like always, like consumers are like advised to first like locate the products, look for the products available. If not, then only make a request to the producer to develop something, right? This is where first process to discover the data. So this is a kind of interface provided. Oh, these are the data sets of your interest based on your search criteria. Then, okay, again, it provides the basic information. Okay, where it is, it's a Kafka and brief description of product and the owned by the which members. Okay, this gives information and users will be able to navigate to the data sets, the resulting data sets to get to see more information. So let's say if you found more than one data sets of interest, right? Then you need to see which is the right thing for you. This is where your further navigation will help. So the navigation go all the way to, okay, your schema and ownership details and lineage. Yeah, I do not have a screenshot at this point of lineage. So lineage also will help you to, oh, where is this data set coming from, right? That is where lineage will help. Then I'll go and see the additional properties. Okay, what domain and any other, like, okay, what class and those things will come in. Then I can also look at the quality view. So get to see the quality. And also, like, this is also like tied back to the business. Oh, okay, this is of customer account and savings account. Is that interest? That can further qualify is this the right thing or not. Then another view is I can search to the business terms. Okay, I can search with the business term, then get to see, okay, this business term, okay, what are the data sets will be associated with that, right? So I'll be able to get to see the data sets. Again, I can go through from here. And this is the last but not the least, the quality view, right? So once you have the quality view, okay, these are my rules. And with that rules, okay, what is my quality metric? Oh, is that 100% compliant, 90%? Is that acceptable for my consumption? That is what a consumer interested in, right? Okay, this is where like journey of the data workbench will finishes, okay, to identify the right data set for a consumption. Then like, okay, so I as a consumer can connect to the Kafka and consume the data. If it's already available in other sync, which can be like Snowflake and SQL Server, then I can go on, okay, access the data set and consume the data set. Let's say if currently it's available at a Kafka, if somebody needs to, if as a consumer, I need to bring it to my Snowflake, maybe schema, right? This is where again, it goes to similar process as a producer, not completely, right? So again, I say, okay, this is the topic of I'm interested. Oh, I will create a basic ingestion pipeline with again say, I need to move the data from this Kafka topic to my Snowflake schema. So I'll fill the template and submit again a pull request. It goes back and run the pipelines and make the data available into Snowflake. So you are ready to rock on and play with the data. So this is the journey of the data consumer. I do not have the slide for the data steward or data governance office. I just wanted to briefly touch upon that, right? So we talked about data producer responsible for bringing the data into the platform. Consumers are like discover and consume the data. What next step is a data governance office. As an officer, I wanted to look at what are the different domains are available, how many data products are there, okay, which products are being heavily used. Okay, I wanted to see the usage statistics. So all this will be required by the data governance office. So we have an interface for a data governance office. So where you can look at the data sets, maybe search for the domains, and each domain, that is what the analytical view can come in, right? So how this data set being used, accessed, again, this is the come from the product out of box feature, but that will be very handy to the data governance office. With that, I'll hand over back to Sheetal.
Thank you, Madhu. One second, I'm just yeah. Madhu, can I share, Madhu? Is it okay? Yeah. Let me know when you can see my screen.
We can see it.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, right, I think Madhu has explained well our implementation. But what was very important also is to work with our stakeholders and make them understand why data mesh is good and what we are doing is making sense to everybody. So there's a simple analogy that I came up with, right? What do we do when we want to buy any kind of product today? We go to a retail platform, an online retail platform like Amazon. We search for the product. Then we see who is owning that product, who is selling that product. We do see the product specifications. And then we also see the customer reviews, which helps us to decide whether we want to buy or not. So basically, these are the different attributes of the product. Discoverability, ability to search, addressability, ability to see who is owning that product, Product details, these make the product self-describing, and the customer reviews make it trustworthy. So the consumers can decide whether they can own the product. Now, and then finally we came up to a solution which actually helps us to publish the data as a product and comply to these product specifications or comply to these product parameters. So our product helps the consumers or data users to search for a product. So it is discoverable. They can see who owns the product because ownership information is there. It's addressable. They can see all the schema information and other details about the product. So it's self-describing. And as Madhu also showed, they can see the data, the data quality. So we have made the data quality transparent and increase the trustworthiness of the data to the consumers. So with this, right, I'll just briefly call out what all we have done in the last 1 year. So Saxo Bank has been selected as a design partner with the LinkedIn Data Hub community, and we are working very closely with Acrel, helping to influence the product roadmap. We have made 20 plus contributions to link the Data Hub over the last year. Business Glossary has been one of our major contributions from Saxo, for which we were also recognized as trailblazers by the LDH community. We have given 2 presentations in the LinkedIn Town Hall in the last 1 year, being on 25th June, where we kind of showcased the Business Glossary use case as Saxo Bank. And then I'll hand over to Divya.
Right. So when it comes to data mesh, the biggest question is, how do you eat an elephant? Of course, the traditional wisdom is break it down into the chunks. You have an option of swallowing it the whole, but it's totally up to you. This approach is actually breaking down the beast into the small chunks and moving forward. And you remember the 4 nodes Sheetal showed you in the beginning of the presentation. Domain-driven thinking, product data as a product, governance, as well as the 4th part, I've forgotten at this moment. But it's not only technology that's driving it. There's a lot of back and forth happening in between. What Madhu and Sheetal talked about, the story does not completely cover the kind of under the hood work they have done. And there, the few key themes in these are, I'll just touch upon these. Next one, please, Sheetal. So the very first thing is, it's all about business. You have to get them in the room. Our conversation changed when we brought business in the room. And whatever we moved forward in this whole project was a great amalgamation of technology and business. And we had great stakeholders who had ownerships, who could open doors, who could surmount the roadblocks. Unless the business is in the room and it is not being driven from there, things will become very, very difficult. And the moment business is bought, technology can align along with it, and we can smoothly move forward into this journey. Because there will be a lot of work that will go on into managing org structures, aligning incentives, creating awareness, helping people feel that you now own things. So that's where your business sponsorship will come handy. Next, please, Sheetal. So other thing is, it's all about people and what goes between them. And this, mind you, makes or breaks the deal. We 3 of us, we really get along very, very well. And not only us, all the stakeholders in this project, we loved working with each other. And we created a harmony. We could bounce ideas because it's an iterative approach. It is not straightforward. Many a times we will test, we will learn, we will fail, we will go back to the drawing board. And for that, people have to align very, very clearly, whether it is the stakeholders like us, Thoughtworks and Saxo, or it is business and tech. And See, as ThoughtWorks, Sheetal talked about that we brought in certain objectivity. We brought in some expertise, but there were certain challenges where only Saxo could pave the way. We couldn't do anything about that. We could suggest a framework, but adoption of that framework could only come if Saxo stakeholders opened doors for us, or they could align the organization. That's why this is called a technosocial expert and technosocial approach, because neither only technology nor only socialization can help this. Next, please. Next, Sheetal. Yeah. So the third and final is the remote work rules. We started talking when India was going into lockdown. At that time, we were starting our conversation. And when the project started, all our stakeholders distributed across continents were in lockdown. The project started in June, last week of June of 2020. It was an unprecedented time. But at the same time, ThoughtWorks had also, though we had always championed working distributed, but we had never completely taken our methodology online. And this was the first time we were testing our ways of working, for which ThoughtWorks is famous. But then again, whatever two aspects I spoke before, they came handy. We did 2 workshops. They were long, 4-hour-long workshops each. And our stakeholders joined from different cities in India, from Europe. And these were the workshops that went very, very well, very effective, very efficient. And we all enjoyed working on that. When we came out, our stakeholders were so happy that they said that we have never done such enjoyable workshops ever. So when done right, when you can bring people together, when you can transcend the barriers of technology and business, then remote work rules. And I think with this, we can close. And if you have any other questions, we are open to it. Scott, I think we can give it over to you, unless Sheetal has some closing remarks here.
No, thank you, Divya. I think, yes, our remote workshops was best of its kind. And that's what I also heard from a lot of senior stakeholders who were involved. And finally, our operating model seemed to be working. Some of us have never seen each other throughout the engagement, but we've got the autonomy that was needed to execute this and all the support that was needed from the leadership.
Yeah, thanks for all this information. It was so awesome. There were quite a few questions in the Q&A that I thought we might want to cover a couple of those as well. Sheetal, if there was anything that you wanted to make sure we'll take a copy of the questions and answers and put that into a Google Doc that we'll share on the recording. But if there was anything there, and there was another question that kind of has been a little bit of a hot topic in the Slack that I actually wanted to ask you specifically, because you're doing a lot with Kafka specifically. And one of the concepts around data mesh is pipelines are second-class concern, right? And that it is, you get the data into the data product, you do your transforms, you do all of that stuff, and then you publish that as a data set. And we were kind of discussing what liveness means and what are your SLAs around liveness of data. And, are you trying to do real-time serving of data via your data products? Or are you trying to do that, is typically more from an operational perspective versus the analytics? And, some people use the data in a data product for operational use cases. But the question I'm trying to get towards is, how do you think about your data products as data mesh data products, and like how live the data should be and how live you want to commit to an SLA around that rather than, keeping that stuff kind of on the operational plane from a microservices perspective.
Right. So I see this as a few concepts that are coming together. One is data mesh, which is purely from getting the domains to own the data and have the product publisher consumer contracts directly. Then operational plane and the analytical plane are two different planes. An analytical plane I consider as one of the consumers, and there are other consumers as well. Right. And then whether it is real time or whether it is batch, these are again very use cases specific. And I don't want to confuse them with data mesh. Data mesh concepts are to federate and to encourage the accountability by federating and encouraging the business ownership. Then it depends on the use case, whether you want to publish it real time, how the SLA should be for that use case or that data product, or whether you want to do it batch. Now for Saxo Bank, we are also pretty early. We just started a couple of years back on Kafka. Last year we started and we productionized our data governance in December last year. So what we are focusing currently is establishing Kafka as the authoritative source and publish all the data products which have a use case for real time with very high, low SLAs and high volume, use Kafka. But early next year, we'll also onboard Snowflake. So Snowflake is predominantly for batch analytical needs. I mean, we are also migrating data warehouse to Snowflake, and all the analytical and reporting requirements that are consuming from data warehouse will eventually consume from Snowflake, and Snowflake in turn will get data from Kafka. So all that work is going on. So there are a few concepts to summarize. Data mesh is to increase the accountability and federate the data management, whether the use case is for real time or for batch, that the teams or organization can decide, and they can decide their own SLAs and use their own stack. For now, we are using Kafka, but and for Snowflake, we'll continue to use Kafka, but we'll also make data, integrate the data workbench with Snowflake at some point of time, majorly to enable the analytical consumers who will be consuming from Snowflake. I'm not sure whether this answers the question, or Madhu, you want to add something here?
So somewhat, it sounds like you're not necessarily differentiating between a data product that is not part of the data mesh and a data product that is, but the data mesh is around you as a domain need to own all of your data, no matter what, whether it's served as an operational purpose or it's served as an analytical purpose. And even if it's served as an analytical purpose, the operational plane may take that data from that data product, but okay, that makes that.
That's right. I think that behavior and consistency is important, because major set of data is still in a conventional way. There are quite a few which have gone to data mesh way, and that pattern should increase with time. At some point of time, everything is data mesh.
Awesome. And as I was saying, you've already answered a whole lot of questions and things. Were there any in the Q&A specifically that you wanted to highlight, maybe that we didn't talk about, that people could hear on the recording rather than reading through it? Was there anything there? And there have been a couple other questions as well that have been asked there. So
yeah. So there's one which I often get in different forums and questions and on LinkedIn as well, is, and I also face it day to day with certain data domains, on how easy or difficult it is to explain this concept to your domain users. Because conventionally, everywhere people think that data warehouse team is responsible for data. We do have certain data domains who think, oh, why don't you own the data? Why don't you make sure that it's working, or the use case is producing the correct results? And the way we have found it working is, it's very important to get first of all, the message should be, when you really start, message it with MVP and go in an experimentation mode with a very short milestone. Okay, maybe 3 months, 6 months defined. It's okay to call a milestone even for a year, whatever works for that organization. And it's okay to say that we have not finalized, but we want to experiment. Second thing is get your early champions onboarded and a few leadership who is ready to sponsor and stand up for you. Because if you fail, yes, you fail, you waste certain resources, but if you succeed, there's a huge win that you're getting. So with that kind of conversation, go on in an experimentation mode, get your early champions, and then it's very important to pick up a use case which is very low in criticality. I think we also, when we started, we wanted to go with we wanted to prioritize the data products or the domains as per the ROI and pick up something which is high in ROI, which can, because it would sell. But what we realized it, if we would do that, then the autonomy to fail would be very less, and it will be very noisy, you will be suffocating to deliver, and you don't know whether you are delivering or not, right? It's very early in concept. So it's actually pragmatic to pick up a use case for your MVP, which is very low in criticality, so that the tech team and the data mesh team who's trying it out is trying it out with peace. If that works, you can definitely showcase that it has worked, right? It has worked, and then scale it out with more critical use cases.
Yeah, this is something that we're hearing from a lot of companies that are talking about it, especially successfully, as to that you start small, right? I think Thoughtworks talks about think big, start small, move fast is something that's like, I think there are probably some people at Thoughtworks that have that tattooed on them. That it's such and I think it makes a lot of sense for data mesh as well, of finding those use cases and finding those champions where you don't have to say, and that you're not going to say everybody's moving to data mesh, start making all of your data products right now, that you walk through the different domains. A domain gets bought in and wants to create more data products, and then they are also helping you sell internally to others. So I think that's great advice. And then we've got some questions that Madhu and Divya also wanted to answer live as well. So I wanted to give them a chance to do that.
Madhu, you go ahead first, and I'll take rest of the two later. The question is about
which tool we're using for this. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, our LinkedIn Data Hub models the lineage. What we have done is how to bring the lineage to the LinkedIn Data Hub is like we pass these connectors, which actually responds for transformations, and push that into a LinkedIn Data Hub. That is how we actually build the lineage.
Right. So I will take Leandro's question as to how to introduce data mesh governance for first-timer organizations. So that's what I meant when I said that how do you eat an elephant? And Sheetal also alluded to it. There is one way that you can start top down. You can tackle all the 4 parts of data mesh all together. That means you start creating your self-serve capability. You start domain-driven thinking. You start treating data as product, and you look at governance also. So that is one way. But organization alignment in this becomes very, very difficult. You require very strong champion. That's why what Scott says, think big, start small, makes sense. If your organization is not at the maturity curve at that point of time, it becomes difficult. But if you take a bottoms-up approach, somewhat what we have done here, even a small organization can start thinking within the data mesh paradigm. You can start smallest of the things, such as technical metadata. You can start with a business glossary, or you can have a repository which falls under this paradigm, and you can align your organization's thinking and keep building up and up from there. So these are 2 approaches you can take. And for smaller organizations who are growing into data, they can take bottoms up approach. And in any case, this approach is more workable. Leandro, does that answer your question? All right, so I'll assume that it is, then welcome. All right, looks like it does. So to Jim's question, Jim, for the first thing is that incidentally, neither Madhu nor Sheetal nor I or other stakeholders such as Graham or Rasmus, we haven't met each other. We haven't seen each other personally. So what was most important was that we create a rapport. And there were countless of calls, personal one-on-one calls that we used to have each other. And our interaction actually extended beyond profession. We started understanding each other. So that was a big bedrock of creating good remote work foundation. After that, we used certain tools. Mural was one of those. And we took the logistical challenges out of it. We did a small session where we took all the stakeholders together as to how this tool works. We spent time in letting people play around with this tool. And then we clarified very, very clearly together, collaboratively, what will be the expectations out of the workshop. So A, we had already alignment. B, we had tools which everybody knew. Nobody was unfamiliar with those tools. Everybody knew how we can work on it. Then we defined clear objectives, what we want out of this workshop, that we are doing remotely. And then we created ground rules. We created boundaries around which the discussion will take place. And we were quick to take each other's feedback, both sides, and implement it. So these were some of the things that helped us. Otherwise, Thoughtworks has a full playbook of remote working. You can go to our website and get to know more about it, or you can reach out to us personally. I hope this helps.
Well, looks like we're good on all of the questions. We've answered everything. So I want to thank again Sheetal, Madhu, Divya for your time. This has been awesome. We'll have the recording up some before end of day today on the US side. So by tomorrow for all of you folks. But thank you everyone. And also if you could all send me the slides just so I can post links to the slides. That would be great. So if anybody's got any closing remarks, please feel free now. But again, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to the presenters. This has been awesome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Scott, for this opportunity. Thank you for having us. And thank you for getting up early.
Thank you, Scott, for all you're doing for Data Mesh and making sure these resources are available. It's really helping us, all of us.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.